Hello students, in this class we will discuss about the human heart. The human heart, which is the pumping organ of our body, it is the pumping organ. Pumping organ of our body, and it pumps blood in different parts of the body. So the shape of human heart, it is roughly triangular. It is roughly triangular in shape, size. It is the size of a closed fist, about a size of closed fist, about 12 centimeter long and 9 centimeter wide in an adult human being. Now the location. Actually, human heart is located at the center of chest cavity, but it is felt that it is located in the left side of our chest cavity. There are two regions. First region is our heart is pointed towards the left side of the chest cavity, and the second region is left ventricle pumps blood forcibly with a powerful muscular contraction. That's why it is felt that heart is located in the left side of the chest cavity. So it is located at the center of chest cavity. Protection. Our heart is protected by three structures. These are: number one, rib cage. Rib cage, which is made up of 12 pairs of ribs, backbone or vertebral column, and the sternum or the chest bone. So these three structures make rib cage, and inside the rib cage it is located. So rib cage protects our heart from mechanical shock. Number two, pericardium. Pericardium is the double layered covering which protects our heart from mechanical shock. It acts as shock proof cushion or shock absorber. Number three, pericardial fluid. It is a lubricating substance or the lubricating fluid which is found between the two layered structure. Means here pericardium contains two layers. Between two layers there is a gap or space, and this space is filled with pericardial fluid. So pericardial fluid serves in two ways. Number one, it reduces the friction and during working of the heart, and number two, it protects our heart from mechanical shock. So in this way, here shape roughly triangular in shape, size about a size of closed fist or about 12 centimeter long and 9 centimeter wide. Location at the center of the chest cavity, protection by rib cage, pericardium and pericardial fluid. So in this way, our heart is protected. Chambers of the heart. Human being have four-chambered heart. So there are four chambers. Upper two chambers are known as auricles or atria, and lower two chambers are known as ventricles. You can see in the rough diagram of human heart here 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the four chambers. Upper two chambers are known as auricles or atria. Here it is right auricle, it is left auricle. Lower two chambers are known as ventricles. Here it is right ventricle and this one is the left ventricle. In this way, 1, 2, these are the two upper auricles and two ventricles which are located in the lower portion. So, four chambers, upper two chambers, are called atria or auricles. Here singular is atrium or auricle. Lower two chambers are called ventricles. Singular form ventricle. So here upper two chambers atria or auricles, lower two chambers ventricles. Septum or wall of the heart. As you know, we have four-chambered heart. So all the chambers are separated and surrounded by walls. The wall is known as septum and it is made up of cardiac tissue, cardiac muscle. So there are four chambers and that's why it has four walls. Here suppose it is heart. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the four chambers. This one is the right auricle, left auricle, right ventricle and left ventricle. Now the walls. Here these two walls means the walls of auricles. These are the walls of auricles. The wall of auricles are thin as they pump blood to the very next chamber which are known as ventricles towards the gravitational pull. That's why right and left auricles have thin wall. Whereas right ventricle, this is the right ventricle. It is the right ventricle. The wall of right ventricle is thicker than the auricle because it pumps blood to the lungs for oxygenation. So it needs powerful contraction. That's why the wall is thick in right ventricles. But in case of left ventricle, the wall is the thickest. It is because left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood in the aorta, and from the aorta the oxygenated blood is carried to different parts of the body. So it needs powerful contraction powerful force to pump the blood in the aorta. That's why it has the thickest wall. Once again, right auricle and left auricle have thin wall because they pump blood to the ventricles which are located just below it, and it pumps the blood towards the gravitational pull. Right ventricle pumps blood to the lungs for oxygenation. That's why it has thick wall, whereas left ventricle has the thickest wall because it pumps blood in different parts of the body against the gravitational pull, such as in the head region, as well as in different remote parts of the body, such as tip of the toes, etc. That's why it has the thickest wall. Blood vessels entering the heart. Blood vessels entering the heart. Number 1, vena cava. Vena cava is the largest vein which carries deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body, and it is poured in the right auricle. Vena cava has two branches. These are anterior or superior vena cava, which carries deoxygenated blood from head region as well as from upper limbs to the right auricle, and inferior or posterior vena cava, and it carries deoxygenated blood from the lower portions of the body. In this way, anterior or superior vena cava and inferior or posterior vena cava pour blood which is deoxygenated type in the right auricle of the heart. Now number 2, pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from lungs to the left auricle. So pulmonary vein is the exceptional vein. Usually veins carry deoxygenated blood, whereas pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from lungs to the left auricle. So in this way, vena cava, pulmonary vein, these are the two blood vessels entering the heart. Here, coronary vein also collects deoxygenated blood from the cardiac muscles present on the Scepter of heart chambers, and this blood, this deoxygenated type of blood is carried and poured in the right auricle. So here these are the vena cava which carries deoxygenated blood and poured in the right auricle. Pulmonary vein, it carries oxygenated blood from lungs after oxygenation, and it is carried to the left auricle. It is coronary vein which collects and carries deoxygenated blood from the septa of heart chambers to the right auricle. Blood vessels leaving the heart. First one is aorta. Aorta is the largest artery which carries oxygenated blood to different parts of the body after branching and rebranching. So aorta is again divided into two branches. First is anterior or superior aorta. It supplies oxygenated blood to the head region as well as in the upper limbs. And second is inferior or posterior aorta. It carries or supplies oxygenated blood to the parts of the body which are located below the heart. So anterior and inferior, these are the two aorta. Second is pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Usually arteries carry oxygenated blood, but here pulmonary artery is again the exceptional artery. It carries deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs for oxygenation. So pulmonary artery carries CO2 rich blood. CO2 rich blood means deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs for oxygenation. So pulmonary artery is located between right ventricle and the lungs, and it carries CO2 rich blood from right ventricle to the lungs for oxygenation. So after oxygenation, again pulmonary vein carries this oxygenated blood to the left auricle. Now there is again coronary artery, which supplies oxygenated blood to the cardiac muscles present on the wall of chambers of the heart. So it supplies oxygenated blood, means oxygen as well as different nutrients which are useful for the cells. So coronary artery begins at the base of aorta and supplies oxygenated blood to the cardiac tissue. Our heart acts as a cashier, bank cashier. It does not use the blood which is pumping by it all the time, but it can use the blood or the nutrients and oxygen present in the blood which is supplied by the coronary artery to them. Now coronary artery. Coronary artery is the artery which supplies oxygenated blood to the cardiac muscles present on the chambers or the septum of the chambers. So coronary artery supplies oxygenated blood. Sometimes due to blockage, insufficient amount of oxygen is supplied by the coronary artery to the part of heart. Then angina pectoris or the chest pain take place. So chest pain, here angina pectoris. Angina pectoris is the chest pain which is caused due to insufficient oxygen supply to the cardiac tissue of the chambers of heart. Whereas myocardial infarction which is also known as heart attack or deadening of the cells of heart chambers is caused due to blockage of coronary artery. Sometimes the inner wall of coronary artery gets deposited by cholesterol or bad cholesterol, and it causes narrow lumen of the coronary artery. It causes insufficient supply of blood to the heart chambers or the septa of heart chambers. That's why deadening of the cells of heart chambers can take place, which is known as heart attack, or biologically it is known as myocardial infarction. So myocardial infarction is caused due to sedimentation of cholesterol on the inner wall of coronary artery. Now the valves of heart chambers. There are two different types of valves present in our heart, and these are: number one, cuspid valves. Cuspid valves are the valves which have two or three leaf-like muscular flap-like structures. Here these are of two types. Number one is tricuspid valves. It has three cusp-like structure. It is also known as right atriculoventricular valve. So tricuspid valves is also known as right atriculoventricular valve, and it is located between right auricle and right ventricle. That's why it is known as right atriculoventricular valves. So it is located between, here it is right auricle, this one is the right ventricle, and between these two, here V1 means tricuspid valves. So tricuspid valves is located between right auricle and right ventricle, and it regulates blood flow from right auricle to the right ventricle. It is the first one. Second is bicuspid valves. It is also known as mitral valve or left atriculoventricular valves. Bicuspid valve is located between left auricle and left ventricle. Here it is V2. V2 means bicuspid valves. So bicuspid valves have two cusp-like structure, and it is located between right auricle and left ventricle. Now the second type of valves, which are known as semilunar valves. These are half moon-like, crescent moon-like valves. You can also say these are pocket-shaped valves. Again, there are two types of semilunar valves. These are pulmonary semilunar valves Pulmonary semilunar valves, here it is pulmonary artery, and at the opening of the pulmonary artery, here V3, V3 means pulmonary semilunar valves. So pulmonary semilunar valves is located at the opening of pulmonary artery in the right ventricle. It prevents backflow of blood, or you can say it regulates blood flow from right ventricle to the lungs for oxygenation. And next one is the aortic semilunar valves. Aortic semilunar valve is located at the mouth or opening of the aorta in the left ventricle. Here it is aorta which supplies oxygenated blood to different parts of the body, and it is originated in the left ventricle. So at the mouth or opening of aorta in the left ventricle, there is a valve, and this valve is known as aortic semilunar valve. It regulates blood flow towards the body parts. It prevents backflow of blood also. So in this way, semilunar valves are of two types. Now the septa or the walls of the heart chambers. There are 4 chambers of the heart, and these are separated by the septa. It is right auricle, and this one is the left auricle. Between right auricle and left auricle, the wall is known as interauricular septum. It is located between right auricle and left auricle. So between right auricle and left auricle, interauricular septum. Again, interventricular septum, which is located between right ventricle and left ventricle. Here it is right ventricle, this one is the left ventricle, and this wall is known as interventricular septum or wall. Third is right atriculoventricular septum, and it is located between right auricle and right ventricle. So between right auricle, here it is right auricle and this one is right ventricle. Between these two, this wall is known as right atriculoventricular septum or wall. And number 4, left atriculoventricular septum, and it is located between left auricle and left ventricle. So between left auricle and left ventricle, here it is left auricle, this one is left ventricle. Between these two, the wall is known as left atriculoventricular septum. In this way, these are the 4 different walls or septa present in our heart. Once again, here interatriculo or auricular septum. Here between 2 auricles, right and left auricle, the wall, this wall is known as interauricular septum. Interventricular septum. Here it is right ventricle, left ventricle. Between these two, the wall is known as interventricular septum. Third is right auriculoventricular septum. Here it is right auricle, right ventricle. Between these two, the wall or septum is known as right auriculoventricular septum. And the fourth, left auriculoventricular septum, it is located between left auricle and left ventricle. This wall, which is located between left auricle and left ventricle, is known as left auriculoventricular septum. So in this way, we have studied in this class about the location of heart, chambers, blood vessels entering and leaving the heart, and also the septa or walls of the heart chambers. In the next class, we will discuss about the functioning of the heart, working of the heart, and closing and opening of different types of valves and formation of two different types of sound, lub and dub. So thank you, students.